Hello and welcome to the February 1st edition of the National Racing Report. I'm Eric Donovan, filling in for Jason Blewett this week. A good weekend of racing as usual here on the Racing Report. 4 big races from Aqueduct, our biggest stakes weekend of the year so far in 2014. Some important stakes races as well out of town, including down at Gulfstream Park, the Hutcheson. Andy Sterling, as always, joined in that seat in the National Racing Report. And Andy, a good series of racing this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's about the 3-year-olds, as it frequently is this time of year. There's a smattering of other races. In fact, a couple of interesting races, particularly the correction here at Aqueduct. But 3-year-olds are going to pretty much be taking the center stage week after week as we head to the Derby.
And we'll start off here at home at Aqueduct in the marquee 3-year-old race of the weekend. It is the Grade 3 Withers, worth 10 Derby points to the winner. 3-year-olds in action here. Obviously, a matchup between 2 very talented New York breds, Uncle Si and Samrad.
Yeah, well, here's Samrod's sort of walkover win in the Damon Runyon in his last start, and it was made a walkover when Deceived, who actually won a race fairly easily yesterday, had serious trouble at the start and then had a rough trip after that. Now, he wasn't beating Samrad, but it enabled Samrad to have that sort of loose lead on the inner track, which sometimes produces these almost freakishly fast and wide margin wins. Not knocking Samrad, he certainly run well to win all of his 3 starts, but I think, in my opinion, his performance was exacerbated by the easy trip, and it's going to be a much different story here because of the presence of the next horse we're going to take a look at.
Uncle Si broke his maiden in his second start. It wasn't because he didn't run well in his first start. He missed by a head, earning a 95 by our speed figure, but he stretched out. Second time out for Gary Contessa and absolutely airs here in a maiden special weight as the heavy favorite. Speed figure-wise, him and Samrad, you know, pretty much right there with each other.
Yeah, they're very, very similar from a speed figure standpoint. Now, he did not have the same kind of trip that Samrad did. Obviously, he beat weaker horses, but he did actually stalk the pace here, and it was a very, very honest pace going a mile and 70 yards. A much more honest pace than the pace that was set in the Damon Runyon. And also the second place finisher, Paxton Time, when he came back and won his next start, he actually improved his Beyer figure by 1 point, but that legitimizes the effort. I think Uncle Si is one of the most talented 3-year-olds we've seen all year in New York. Whether or not he's going to go on and beat better horses remains to be seen. But in my opinion, I know you're the morning line maker, and every time I argue with you, I embarrass myself. I'm not so sure he's not going to end up favored here, Uncle Si.
It's a possibility. It's hard for me as the morning line maker to make him favored over Samrad, who's 3 for 3. He just won a stake by 16 lengths as opposed to Uncle Si, who just comes off a maiden win by 14 lengths. But I could see it going the other way.
You know, it's one of those hard situations you run into where Uncle Si is the horse that's on the tip of everybody's tongue, whereas, as you said, Samrad at least has sort of done more on the racetrack. Be interested to see how it plays out in the odds board, but also on the racetrack, because these 2 horses will have to hook up at some point in this race. And if they do, Classic Jock and Roll, we'll take a look at the stretch run of his Jerome last time, but really the action was early in the race where he was hung out very, very wide. And if you followed Trackus, he ran 63 feet more than the eventual winner of this race, Noble Moon, making him easily the best horse in the race. Mostly, though, horses that have come out of the Jerome have not come back and run particularly well, though we have seen a couple of them sort of equal their figures. In my opinion, Classic Jock and Roll is in a position to take advantage of a speed duel that may at some point hook up between Samrad and Uncle Si.
You know, I wasn't so sold on the Jerome. I think looking back on it, the way horses have come out of that race to run, the way the race set up and everything. If I'm trying to beat Uncle Si and Samrad here, I'm trying to do it with somebody else. And I think you have a couple other interesting horses in here, including the 6 Honorable Judge, who's a foal to a Fleet again, who won the Withers for these connections. A horse that improved vastly to win the Withers. This is a horse that's won twice at Parks. Did not do well in the Iroquois at Churchill Downs in a Grade 3 out there. They'll try it again, another Grade 3 here in the Withers, and we'll see what you get from Honorable Judge today.
Yeah, I didn't get this horse at all. He got a very, very good setup, a very fast pace. You could see in there in a race that completely collapsed. And at best, maybe that figure was set up by the pace, and I think it's hard to believe, even though he's had a couple months, he could improve a couple just in general on random improvement. But I don't think he's necessarily that good a horse, and maybe he will. Maybe he'll step forth, but I like Classic Jock and Roll's race last time. And I think that Jerome may have played a bit like a turf race, and that horses that didn't run at all were sort of sucked into the running. But Classic Jock and Roll did run absolutely the best race in there, and I'm taking him to beat Uncle Si. I don't think it'll be easy. Samrad is my distant 3rd choice. I don't like Samrad in this race at all.
Okay, big opinion there against Samrad. We'll take it.
He's a dunce cap horse.
Really going that far to make a dunce cap?
I'll wear the dunce cap on Talking Horses to start out with you tomorrow, and I'll say this again on Talking Horse today. If Samrad wins this race, I don't like his chances. I hope I'm wrong. I like his connections. I hope they do well with him. I don't like him today.
Okay, well, it's a strong opinion there on the Withers, and we'll see what you got coming up in the Busher for the 3-year-old fillies. A race that, of course, last year we did see Princess of Silmar in these series of races on the inner track for 3-year-old fillies. Don't think we have quite the talent in this year's edition, but nonetheless, a solid running, and we'll start off by taking a look at horses coming out of the Busanda. I'm against the group of horses coming out of the Busanda here, including the winner, Fierce Boots, who had everything her own way.
I certainly don't like Fierce Boots in here. I mean, she does draw well again on the inside, but, you're supposed to see Kettle Twist show more speed and not be as rated as she was in that race. And also, there is another speed on the far outside, Vero Amore, we'll get to, and I don't like Fierce Boots either. She's a classic last time was the time horse. I like Fleet of Gold out of that race. I mean, once again, using trackers, Fleet of Gold ran 62 feet more than Fierce Boots and losing by 4 lengths to her. So really, she ran a relatively equivalent race while chasing on the outside. She's your man, Tony Dutrow, and you like a lot of his horses to move forward, and I'm hoping she takes another step forward. I think she's the one out of that race you want, whether or not you absolutely want her.
Well, the absolute speed of the race could be the horse on the outside that you previously mentioned, the 9 Vero Amore, who, you know what, if she can handle the distance here, I think she's accomplished the most on the racetrack so far. I think so far to date, she's the best horse in the race. She hasn't run past 6.5 furlongs. This will be a big test in distance for her. But you know what, if she gets the lead gets the lead going long on this track has had a history of carrying some horses, and perhaps this is just the best horse in the race right now.
She has run the best races. I can't argue with that. But it's apples and oranges to me between 6.5 furlongs or 6 furlongs and running a mile and a 16th today. And another problem I have with her outside post and a rider who has not had any success of any kind here on the inner track. I don't know that this rider is going to be able to rely on him to get her the lead, especially if Mike Luzzi is aggressive with Kettle Twist inside of her. And if that happens and she gets hung out and doesn't get the lead, then she has no chance of getting this. And the only way you're trying to get her to get the distance is if you think she can get loose in the lead, which I think the distance is a question, and I think that is a very, very questionable situation.
Okay, we did see a nice maiden win first time out from Ballylee from the Darley stable trainer Tom Albertrani. Good effort from slightly off the pace at 3-1 odds here. A race where I think this is a horse that obviously could get something out of this race and move forward in the Busher here, where you have a race that just seems like it could be ripe for the taking for a horse like this that can just come up off a maiden win, improve a little bit, and get the job done here.
There's no argument with that. She's absolutely the wild card in this race, and some of the ways one of the horses to beat, and she should be a short price in here. At least she's getting a chance to prove herself in the dirt, something that her connections did not allow her dam to do after an explosive winner debut at Saratoga, where they ran her on synthetic, they ran her on grass, they ran her in Europe. They did everything wrong with her, and eventually it just destroyed her as a racehorse. I think she could be a good one, Ballylee, and if somebody comes out of this race and does big things, I think it'll be her. I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm going to take a shot with Fleet of Gold. The price will be right, and using her and Ballylee, they're the two I'm using to start out this late pick 4.
Okay, we'll go to race number 6 on this Saturday card at the Big A. It's the Tobaggan. We do have a heavy favorite in here in the form of Strapping Groom, who goes as the number 1 horse in here for David Jacobson. Big effort by Strapping Groom in the Gravesend, earning a 110 Beyer speed figure. No doubt about it. He's easily the horse to beat in here. And when he's on his game, when he's at his best, he's one of the top sprinters in the country right now.
Yeah, I mean, he has had that one effort in the Bold Ruler where he ran off at 7 furlongs and completely collapsed. But other than that, he hasn't run a single race that isn't going to win that race. And I'm not even sure his Bold Ruler effort would win this race. He is, listen, we're advocating a horse that's going to be 2 to 5, but to try to bet against Strapping Groom in this spot, at least to me, especially with the appetizing races coming in after it, seems to be folly. The question is whether or not you have some goofy idea for a long shot to be second. I don't. I'm not saying he's going to be second, but I think the only horse that I would take to beat him is the potential speed. We'll look at Dad's Caps, even though in his last race, he lost to the likeliest second-place finisher, Candyman E.
Few horses come out of the same race. Candyman E, the winner. Dad Caps finished second. Pretoreo, the third-place finisher in the Spooky Mulder Overnight Stakes here back on December 13th. I guess that's one way to beat Strapping Groom is to do it on the front end. I'm kind of thinking that Strapping Groom's going to be, right up there kind of with Dad's Caps chasing him. But, it's hard to imagine someone coming from behind other than Candyman E to really beat him, too.
Candyman E has never run a race that's really going to be able to beat him. I think, or not recently run a race. I'll be surprised if he does it. I know a lot of people want to make cases for maybe Don Tito has a chance to pick it up. He actually ran pretty well last time. I just think there's an enormous class difference. And to me, if Dad's Caps wires him, I tip my hat to him, but Strapping Groom is no overwhelming favorite I won't try to beat.
All right, the last race, or it's not the last race in the sequence, but it's the 8th race in the card. The last race we'll discuss here on National Racing Report in terms of the Aqueduct Stakes from Saturday. It's the correction for fillies and mares going 6 furlongs. This race came up a big field, Andy. Nice to see this race draw the 12-horse field. I think, a product of the way, the condition book's been written lately beneath the new connections down in the racing office. But nonetheless, a rematch of some of the top 3 finishers here.
Yeah, I mean, the first question to ask yourself is, do you think the horses that ran the Interborough that have the stakes experience are the better, classier horses than so many young upstarts in this race? Or do you think they're not that good and they're dressed up by just sort of facing each other all the time? And some of these newer horses are just as fast. I think a lot of us, including you and I, are going to take the opinion that a lot of the young upstarts are just as good as these horses, and I'm betting against them. I certainly don't like Lion DNA, who had an absolutely perfect trip in that race. I don't want that horse. Baby J is dangerous. I just have to feel like someone will go with her early. If I took one of the 3, and I don't know how you feel about it, I prefer Delightful Quality. I'll have her in the mix. I just want to try to beat all of them.
I think Delightful Quality is going to be helped by the bigger field today. I think she's the kind of horse that, probably relishes a little bit of hitting up front. And with a 5-horse field last time out, she just didn't get that necessary action up front. I think she'll be better suited today, but still, that doesn't make her a winner in this race. She's, had 12 starts. She's been short prices in most of them and has 7 second-place finishes, as you said there. So, it's a race chock full of, other ways to go.
And I think a lot of people are going to fall for the next horse we're going to take a look at. I don't know what price you made this horse, Uno Duo, on the morning line, but people like Grays, they like the Juddmonte Silks, they like Bill Mott. I've been very disappointed in a horse who has not stepped up and run a fast race since she ran one good race in Saratoga.
Yeah, even her race last time out, the race that we're looking at now in the Fickle Fanny, I mean, this just is not good enough race in terms of who she beat and, speed figure. I got to look elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I think she's going to be. What price did you make her morning line?
I made it like 6 to 1, 5, 6 to
well,
1. I made a bunch of them all the same price.
5, 6 to 1 is taking money in this big field, and I think she's going to be around that price, maybe even 9 to 2 or something. And to me, there's just other better horses to take a chance with, including the next horse we're looking at. The problem with the next horse we're looking at is she's carrying you, me, and just about everybody else around the racetrack. But when I'm Mom's Favorite was good, this was her win in the Miss Preakness.
Yeah, this was a good effort in the Miss Preakness. She had a nice effort before that at Pimlico and a non-winners of 1 allowance. That's my question with her. She was good for a month last spring. Can she ever get back to that form? She's got a trainer change to a Butch Reed who we like, but certainly Tony Dutrow had her before, and he's one of the top trainers in the game. So big question mark. What do you get from her today?
Well, this was a good effort because she did have some trouble at the start in the Miss Preakness, and she was turning into what looked like one of the better 3-year-old filly sprinters in the country. Obviously, the wheels came off in our tougher victory ride and test, but I don't think it was just the competition. She did not run her races. She's been given a rest. She switched to Butch Reed's barn. He's got 3 tough horses in today. She's one of them, and I like her chances if he can get her back to her good races. But this is not an easy spot for her to start her 4-year-old season.
Indeed, it is not. Mary Meadow, the next horse we'll take a look at in the Are We Dreaming overnight stakes here on December 27th, finishing second to Laguna Girl, who's on the rail and wire the field.
This was a rare sort of step back for her, though. From a speed figure standpoint, she continued to run one fast figure after another, where she runs in the mid to high 80s every time. She could not run down the loose in the lead Laguna Girl, who seemingly out of nowhere became a tough racehorse. She did not run well in her subsequent start. But Mary Meadow's a horse that has the speed to put herself in position, but she has the ability to rate, and I think she's a player in this race as well, and I'm going to have her in the mix. I got to tell you, this correction is a super, super fun race because you're not going to see a 2 to 1 shot, 8 to 5 shot in this race. Whoever you like, you have to be getting paid here.
And there's a lot of ways to go. I mean, there's horses that we didn't even mention that I think you can make cases for. Masasi looks good off the second-place finish to La Verdad last time out. You do have Love to Score off a trainer change to Rudy Rodriguez if you want to try to get cute with a long shot, something like that. There's a lot going on in this correction, which is good news for players.
I agree. This is a terrific race, and I really hope that people play in this race and we don't get a bunch of scratches, because I think there are plenty of long shots in this race that could very well get a big piece of the purse.
All right, we'll head down south now and take a look at the Hutcheson at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. 7 furlongs, race number 10. It's a grade 3, and we'll start off by talking about a couple of horses that met each other in a spectacular bid, CZ and the Todd Pletcher-trained Trail Blaze. Yeah,
Trail Blaze was an enormous disappointment as you see him floundering towards the outside in this race. After his sensational debut here at Aqueduct, he did absolutely no running down there. And CZ, well, got a good figure of 90 and continued off that 87, breaking his maiden. But overall, I'm a little bit dubious the quality of this race. Just call Kenny came out of this race. He was coming in the race. He looked very, very weak. And I know the figure came up fast. I don't want to fight against the figure. But I think this is a very complicated race. And you have to go through the different races and decide which is the race I trust the most and the horses out of that race I trust the most. And for me, I ultimately decided I trusted the Gulfstream Park Derby the most.
I agree. I mean, after watching the 2 races, I thought it was the more legit race. And we'll take a look at it now as Wildcat Red, who's the 5-2 morning line favorite, finishes a few lengths ahead and in front of of Pablo Del Monte, who, you know, with a different set of circumstances, might be able to improve his finish a little bit today. To me, these were the main two in the Hutcheson.
Yeah, I like Pablo Del Monte, which is the horse on the outside, finishing fourth. He broke a step slow. He was 3-4 wide the entire way around the racetrack. The speed pretty much held up in here, and I thought this was a good effort by him. And I think there's a chance he can turn the tables on Wildcat Red. Now, Javier Castellano's taking Wildcat Red. Pablo Lopez is switching to Pablo Del Monte, but I think it's going to actually help him. I like the switch from Kenta Sormo, and his races are pretty good. He might be better off going a little shorter, and both these horses will benefit from turning back to 7 furlongs, while the horses out of the Spectacular Bid have to go an extra furlong.
And we'll take a look at another horse that looks a little bit interesting in here. It's a maiden winner last time out down at Gulfstream Park from Eddie Keneally's barn, a horse that sped to the lead, going 6 furlongs and drew off to win by 5. It's Gambler's Ghost, the number 6 horse in this race today. And
I don't know what to do with him, Eric. He may have real talent. This was an interesting-looking field of first-time stars, and he just had them at his mercy. The problem I have is that it just seems all too often we have seen Eddie Keneally have very, very splashy, sexy-looking debut winners, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and they don't come back and run as well in their subsequent starts. You've got a horse like Tashir on the outside that out of nowhere beat the 1-9 Giancarlo and got a well-deserved 93 buyer figure, but that was at Calder. Where did that race come from? Can he reproduce it? Can Trailblaze get back to his form from his first start? Can a horse like Long on Value was purchased by the Wachtels and given to Bill Mott after running against Tigers in the Hopeful and Champagne with a little bit of class relief? Can he show some ability in here? A ton of questions, but ultimately, as I said, Pablo Del Monte and Wildcard Red, the horses out of the Gulfstream Park Derby. This is another race, so I think, Eric, you want to fool around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem keying in on one of the likely choice, you know, one of the top 3 or 4 finishers, but I think there's room for some long shots underneath here. I do think that you could play around a little bit and hope to, you know, fill out your exact at least with a 10-1 or over.
Right, it's a tough handicapping puzzle, but a fun group of horses getting together.
All right, we'll head across Alligator Alley and take a trip up north slightly to Tampa Bay Downs for the Sam Davis. 3-year-olds in action here, mile and a 16th, no Derby points on the line here, but an interesting race as you have the New York bred Noble Cornerstone going down at Tampa Bay Downs as one of the horses to beat in here. Big maiden win at Aqueduct here in November, and then a second in the Springboard Mile behind Louis Flower.
Yeah, there he is closing on the outside. I thought he hung a little bit in this race and did lose to a long shot, but looking through the race, I can't argue with the speed figures, and this horse has gotten the best numbers of anybody. I'm kind of curious here, Eric. Between the big 3 players we'll talk about to start the show, Noble Cornerstone, Cousin Stephen, and Harpoon, who would you have made the favorite?
I probably would have gone to Harpoon.
Todd Pletcher factor.
Todd Pletcher connections, Let's Go stable, and, you know, a big maiden win last time, although it did take him a few times to get through. Yeah, we got to take a look at another horse first. We'll talk about Cousin Stephen now, who looked like, you know, he could have been could be a good thing in the Derby Trail back in November in this race at Aqueduct. We're taking a look at now. He drew off to win by 7. This was an impressive effort. Subsequent start at Gulfstream not quite as good, but he did run in a good allowance race behind a top billing and commissioner.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree and say that his effort at Gulfstream was better than this win. He got, you know, when horses win by big margins, it's usually a function of the horse that they're facing, and probably a lot of these horses weren't as ready to go a mile and an eighth as Cousin Stephen won, which increased his factor. He got an 81 buyer speed figure, but when he went to Gulfstream for his next start, well, Commissioner won the race, and I'm not a Commissioner's biggest fan, but he seems to be on everybody's list of top Derby horses right now for Todd Pletcher. Top billing, who finished second, he's right at the top of everybody's list for the Derby but mine. He came back and had an impressive win last week at Gulfstream Park. High Kodiak Warrior, who finished third, had run a very good race behind Coup de Grace in his prior start. I think he met a very, very tough field. It was his first start in 2 months. He was going down to Gulfstream Park. He was attacking the pace more than maybe he really wanted to be, and I still think that he improved off his maiden win. Whether or not he turns out to be a Derby hype horse, that's a completely different question. Whether or not any of these horses do is another question. But I don't think he ran badly in that race, and this is a very good litmus test for him. And to me, I think he's the horse to beat it here, along with Noble Cornerstone. You may be right about Harpoon. I know he ran impressively to win, but once again, big margins, they're a lot to do with the other horse behind him. This horse has pretty much run a similar figure every time he's run, Eric.
Yeah, that's one knock against him. I mean, he started off his career at Saratoga, closing weekend there, finishing second and getting a 77 buyer speed figure. All 4 of his races have been between 77 and 82, including this victory in which year in the 82 for a 5.5 length maiden win. Took him a while to get his maiden diploma. Did face some nice horses along the way. Finished second to Cower Prince at Belmont back in October. You know, perhaps this is just a son of Tappet who, you know, may just be getting better right now, peaking at the right time.
He better not be peaking. he better have a long climb up the peak because he's a long way from beating any good horses. You know, the Matterhorn race, I know that Matterhorn is another Todd Pletcher first-time starter, very impressive first out we never saw again. Wolf then, who finished third, has subsequently run 2 clunkers in a row since that race, and I actually, both of us thought he ran okay in that maiden race, so I'm wondering how strong that race was. And Todd Pletcher, we usually expect to see them improve dramatically down at Gulfstream in their first starts, and he improved his Beyer speed figure 4 points. Maybe he can win this race, but to me, at least to me, on the racetrack, he has not shown that he's as fast as Noble, Cornerstone, and Cousin Steven. I don't see anybody else in here. Did you see any long shots that merit consideration? None of them have done anything of any merit on the dirt.
Yeah, no, I thought it was between these 3 horses. Anyone else would knock me out of anything.
I'm looking forward to this race because, listen, Todd's horses can always take a step forward, and the other 2 can maybe run. These horses, every one of them has a right to be a legitimate horse in the Triple Crown, whether or not that's the case. This is this time of the year is all about.
All right, before we head across the country to Santa Anita, we'll stop off at the Oaklawn Park in Arkansas and take a look at the Martha Washington for 3-year-old fillies. 1 mile of distance here, a bunch of horses stretching out of the Dixie Belle. Opening a weekend at Oaklawn Park. We'll take a look at the Winter Street Story in addition to Racing Holiday and X-Ray Vision.
I don't know about you, Eric, but one thing I know, I don't want anybody out of this sloppy track Dixie Belle at 6 furlongs. There's other speed in this race. That race was kind of an ugly race. There looks like there's some talent in this race. I found this to be a fascinating race, and the first thing I'm going to do is pitch everybody that comes out of this field.
I'm right there with you, my friend. I agree with you 100%. There probably will be 1, 2, 3, and there'll probably be, I mean, at least Racing Holiday and X-Ray Vision will be big prices. I don't know about Steve's horse, The Street Story, but a number of horses coming off, flashy wins last time out. A couple maidens, 1 allowance win. The allowance winner is the 4 Kiss Moon, who we'll take a look at now. This was a very impressive effort coming off a race at over the Polytrack at Turfway Park to break her maiden. First time on the dirt, she stepped forward. Big win here.
Keep in mind, she ran a 53 in her first start, and this is relevant to a horse we'll talk about a little later, and then improved 24 points when stretched out in the dirt. A little moisture in the track, but she absolutely buried this field, and I think in some ways she's the horse to beat. I'm going to use her very much in my box. She's in my play. This was an impressive win, but she's also a horse that had the lead in there, and there is a lot of speed in this rate, and the thing I like about the next horse for Wayne Luce broke its maiden, at least she stalked early in the running.
Was able to stalk Ireland, a horse that really hadn't shown much at all in 5 starts as a 2-year-old. Blossomed in her first start as a 3-year-old here, drawing off to a 8 3/4 length win at odds of 13-1 for D. Wayne. This is a full to a Dublin. Obviously some pedigree power here. Maybe this is just a horse that's just gotten better as the 3-year-old season has come along in here. Certainly a win over the track is a big plus at the distance as well. Do you get the same effort you got from her last time?
I don't know. She's coming back in just 15 days, but Wayne Lucas had Will Take Charge as well as Oxbow down there, and they certainly flourished in Arkansas and did a lot of good things after that. I think she's a very, very dangerous horse, and she's very much in my play along with Kiss Moon, but I'm going to take a flyer with the next horse we have. A bit of a trainer angle, Eric.
Okay, what do you got here? Josie Carroll, the trainer of Aragorn Amy, first time out of Woodbine, December 15th, gets the win here. Will stretch out, second time out. Looks like a distance, maybe turf pedigree here on this one.
There may be some turf, but Josie Carroll has tremendous numbers going synthetic to dirt. She's done very well. She had Careless Jewel a few years ago, who won our Alabama. She also had Summer Applause, a horse that Chad Brown ended up last year. She broke her maiden on the synthetic and improved like 20, 25 points in a subsequent start in the dirt down at Fairgrounds. And you can take a look at the 4-horse Kiss Moon, who improved so dramatically, and you look at this horse. I don't know how relevant the speed figure is for a dirt race. I think there's a question of whether or not with this pedigree she'll love the dirt, but Josie Carroll has done a good job of finding the right horses. Could have left this horse at Fairgrounds and run in the turf with her. Instead, she's coming here to run in the dirt. I'm going to trust this trainer. This horse will be a price, and I don't think that Aragorn's and this horse's pedigree says she's supposed to even win at 6 furlongs first time out, synthetic or not. So I think with the distance she'll improve, and the price is good enough for me to take a shot.
Okay, going with Aragorn Amy, an upset in the Martha Washington. You foreseeing the morning line favorite there for Steve Asmussen coming up at the Fairgrounds. Yeah, I just didn't see, I just didn't see how the race was going to shape up in her favor, but you never know.
Yeah, well, she's been a short price in the races. Maybe it'll continue. It'll make more value for the others. The Martha Washington's a very interesting race.
It is indeed. A Grade 1 up next at Santa Anita, the Las Virgenes Stakes for 3-year-old fillies. 1 mile the distance here. We'll head toward the outside and talk about streaming and Taste of Candy. They met in the Hollywood Starlet back on December 7th. Streaming coming to this race undefeated now, 2 for 2 for trainer Bob Baffert, but is yet to run in the dirt.
And both these horses obviously have talent. Down in the rail in about fourth right now is Arethusa, who we'll take a look at next time in a big win. She was badly compromised when she got left in a race where the speeds ran 1-2 around the racetrack. In my opinion, both of these horses, Streaming and Taste Like Candy, are a bit dressed up by the way the race played. I'm not saying they're not the two horses to beat, because they are, but there's going to be more pace in this race. You have a horse like Fashion Plate with Gary Stevens, who broke her maiden her last start going 6 furlongs. She is clearly going to go in here. Artemis isn't that slow. I think we're going to see a different pace scenario which could work against both of these. And Taste Like Candy, her last start, I think she should have won the Santa Ynez, but she went mile to 16th, back to 6.5 furlongs. Now she's stretching out again. What is her identity?
I don't know. I think Jerry Hollendorfer, who certainly knows a lot of identities of his horses. He's got a lot of them, and he knows how to sort them out, and he knows what they are and what they do. This one, he's still trying to figure out, I think, a little bit. Well,
I'm trying to figure out how this race is a Grade 1. So a lot of people are trying to figure things out. If this is a race of Grade 1, the Holy Bull, the Florida, every prep, the Fountain Youth, they should all be Grade 1s. I think they're Grade 1 horses in this race. I don't know how this race is a Grade 1 though, but I do know that I think Arethusa is a very interesting horse to take a chance with.
Indeed, Arethusa really blew the doors off the Sharp Cat field. Going in that race as a maiden at Hollywood Park and then coming back in the Hollywood Starlet, as you saw before, having some trouble at the start. This is a horse that's really done well on synthetic, not so great on the dirt. Is it a matter of the horse just getting better with a little bit more time, or is she just better on synthetic?
I'm hoping that it's better with time. You look at her first start, albeit at 6.5 furlongs, she didn't run at all. I'm hoping she's getting better, but that's a very legitimate question, Eric, and I cannot obviously give a firm answer. We'll find out today, but I'm betting Arethusa today. I think she's an extremely interesting horse. That was a big win in the Sharp Cat. She should have no problem with distance. Maybe a mile's a little too short for her, but she's going to get more pace to run, and I don't think she ran that badly in the Hollywood Starlet. When you consider her breaking slowly and the slow pace and the trip she had, she will run better today. I hope she runs well enough to win.
And should get a good price, 8-1 in the morning line. I could see, I could see getting between 5 and 8-1, maybe 10-1.
I don't see how she can be much shorter in here. Streaming and Taste Like Candy have to take all the money. Arethusa, they're all going to forget about her. They'll remember her after today.
All right, one more from Santa Anita. The Arcadia on the turf at 1 mile is a Grade 2 for 4-year-olds and up. We'll start off by taking a look at the defending champion of this race. That is Suggestive Boy, who won the Arcadia last year, followed that up with a win in the Kilroe Mile, but has not been seen since March 2nd.
I love this horse. He is a really, really cool horse. On the other hand, I think you're supposed to bet against him today. I just think you're not supposed to take a horse in this kind of tough spot off a long, long layoff. Obviously, he's going to get pace to run into. He has the qualifications. He can easily win this race. He beat Silencio, who I think may be the horse he'll have to beat. Everyone will have to beat when they run the Kilroe Mile on Santa Anita Derby Day, Santa Anita Handicap Day. I just think there's a lot going on in this race. I don't want this horse off a layoff. I'm sorry that Peace and Justice scratched, but I still think we'll see a pretty quick pace in here.
Yeah, I think you have a good race in here. You get some horses stretching out. You have some horses that are, confirmed speed horses. You have a horse like Vagabond Shoes who's turning back off the Breeders' Cup turf.
Very
so a good mix of horses, a fun race to handicap. And we'll take a look at the Sir Beaufort now, a race that featured a very fast pace, including a couple of the ones that are in here, like the 7 Tom's Tribute, who is part of that pace, but doesn't necessarily need to be on the pace.
Well, I think that's why you don't want Procurement and Sea Sage in this race, because they took advantage of the fast pace. Tom Tribute was way, way too close early, and of all the horses in the pace, he survived it the best. And I think in some ways that makes him the horse you want. But the horse I'm most interested in is No Jet Lag. I don't know why he was as close to the pace as he was in the Breeders' Cup Mile. I don't know why he was fighting out in the pace in this race. I think with Corey Nakatani, they're going to take this horse back and try to make one run. And when they made a run with him back in October in the City of Hope at Santa Anita, he ran a gigantic race. I'm going to hope he gets back to it. But Tom's Tribute's on my ticket. Vagabond Shoes you mentioned. I don't like Unbridled's Note stretching out in here. Regally Ready got an easy field and walked the lead last time. A different scenario, though he's helped by Peace and Justice scratching. This is a very, very fascinating race. There's some talented horses in here, too.
And we didn't even mention Winning Prize, who ran pretty well against Silencio and Summerfront last time out. I know he had the lead, but those are some pretty nice horses, and he battled all the way down to the stretch there, all the way down to the wire.
And it was a mile and a 16th. This is a mile. His win at Del Mar, I thought, was an extraordinarily impressive win. And frankly, on the synthetic, the off-the-turf Shadwell, he ran all right to be fourth in there. I agree, he's a talented horse, and he may be the one who's helped the most by the scratch of Peace and Justice, because he's got real speed, and they're going to have to send him. The question is, how fast is the pace? Can they get the lead with them? If they do, how fast do they go? I think everybody wants to pay a lot of attention to this race. These are good horses, and also it's a prep for the Frank Kilroe, which once again on Big Cap Day is another big race we're going to want to look at, and a lot of these horses will be back in there facing Silencio among others.
A fun weekend of stakes action here at Aqueduct and across the country as well. well. 3-year-olds, 3-year-old fillies, some sprinters, some long races, some turf races as well. So it's been a lot of fun here on the National Racing Report Filly for Jason.
It's a great time of year, and you know, most of it we spend thinking about the Triple Crown chase. But the truth is, there are interesting races every weekend, and that's what makes this show fun. This show and Monday show, where I'll be here with the MIG, going back over the races. Just so much to learn.
All right, thanks for watching this episode of the National Racing Report. Don't forget to stay tuned for The Edge coming up next. They'll go over the late pick 4 at Gulfstream and Santa Anita Park.